The funeral was nearly over when the chapel doors opened. A woman walked in, calm and quiet. Beside her was a teenage boy. He looked about 17. Elena Holloway turned and stared. Her breath caught. The boy looked just like her husband, Marcus. Same eyes, same walk, same serious face. People whispered. Her daughters, Jasmine and Naomi, stood frozen. The woman walked to the front and placed a white lily on Marcus's casket. Then the boy stepped forward. "Goodbye, Dad," he said. The room went silent. Eleanor's world shifted. 28 years of marriage. And this was how she found out. Eleanor Holloway sat quietly in her dining room, the soft clink of a spoon against her untouched tea, the only sound in the house. Days had passed since the funeral, but the image of that boy, Jaden, refused to leave her mind. It wasn't just his face that haunted her, it was the timing. 17 years old. That meant Marcus had been lying to her for almost 2 decades. Every anniversary, every Sunday dinner, every time he kissed her forehead and said he was working late, all of it was now under suspicion. Elena had always lived with discipline. Her life was about control and quiet grace. She had been Marcus's partner in everything. She gave up her dreams of being an architect to raise their daughters and support his legal career. When Marcus ran for district attorney, she was the woman behind the camera, organizing fundraisers, managing public appearances, smoothing out rumors before they became headlines. People admired their marriage. They said it was solid. She thought so too. Maybe it wasn't passionate in the later years, but it was loyal, or at least she thought it was. Jasmine, their oldest, was already stepping into her father's legacy. Married to a young pastor, Jasmine believed in order, image, and discipline. To her, grief was something you dressed up and kept neat. "Don't give this woman attention," she told Elena. "She's looking for money. She wants to drag our name through the dirt. Don't let her win." Jasmine had inherited her father's need to keep things in line. Naomi, the younger daughter, was the opposite. She saw through people, always had. Even as a child, she noticed when Marcus showed up to her recitals late or didn't call on her birthday until the evening. She didn't say much back then, but the cracks started early. Naomi didn't grieve her father the way Jasmine did. She grieved the relationship she never fully had with him. "Mum deserves to know the truth," she said sharply over breakfast. "This isn't about Renee. This is about Dad and what he chose to do." Then there was Shayla, Elena's younger sister. She had always been blunt, sometimes to a fault, but her love for Elena was fierce. She never fully trusted Marcus, not because of anything he did to her directly, but because she sensed his absence behind the charm. Shayla was already on her laptop, pulling up Renee's old property records, scanning her LinkedIn, calling in favors from a friend who worked in legal records. "If you think I'm letting this woman slide in with a grown child like this is normal, think again," she muttered. Elena said little during those days. She didn't argue with Jasmine, didn't nod along with Naomi, didn't try to stop Shayla. She simply moved through the house like a shadow, walking past memories that now felt like lies. Then one morning, she finally opened Marcus's private desk drawer. It was a space she never touched. He had always been private about his work, and she respected that. But now, respect felt like foolishness. Inside, she found a receipt from a private medical clinic. The date, nearly 18 years ago, lined up too perfectly. There was also a photo, a young Renee, visibly pregnant, standing in front of a modest brick house. Tucked behind the photo was a folded card. The front said, "For Jaden." Inside, the handwriting was unmistakably Marcus's. "One day I'll explain everything. You deserve to know who you are and where you come from. I'm not proud of the silence, but I'll make it right." Elena stared at it for a long time. She wasn't just mourning her husband anymore. She was mourning the version of her life that had never actually existed. The man she thought she knew, the man she built her entire adult life around, had compartmentalized his love, given parts of himself to another woman, another child, and never once told her. She sat back in her chair, staring out the window, the world outside moving forward, while hers stood still. The flowers from the funeral were starting to wilt. The food in the fridge remained untouched. And in the quiet of her perfect house, Eleanor realized she was no longer just a widow. She was the last person in her own life to know the truth. 3 days after the funeral, the house had gone quiet. The casseroles had stopped coming. Most of the guests had gone back to their own lives. The silence felt heavier now, too full of questions no one wanted to ask out loud. Elena sat at the kitchen table in her robe, a cold cup of tea sitting untouched in front of her. Her eyes were empty, like someone waiting to wake up from a long, cruel dream. Then the doorbell rang. She stood slowly, her slippers brushing against the hardwood floors. At the door stood a man in a dark jacket. "Delivery for Mrs. Holloway," he said, handing her a thick white envelope stamped "Confidential Legal Notice." She closed the door with a soft click and sat back at the table. The envelope trembled in her hands before she opened it. Inside was a letter from the law offices of Morris and Wills. It was formal, cold, and precise, and it hit like a series of punches. Renee Dalton was filing a petition to legally validate the paternity of her son, Jaden Dalton, born March 7, 2008. She claimed Marcus Holloway was the biological father. Attached was a copy of a DNA test dated 2 years ago, a 99.9% match with Marcus. Also included Jaden's birth certificate, with Marcus's full name listed under father. And then the final blow, a legal request to revise the terms of Marcus's estate. Renee was seeking retroactive child support and legal inheritance for Jaden. Eleanor stared at the pages. Her hands were cold. Her mouth was dry. She read the letter again, then a third time. This wasn't a woman looking for attention or pity. This was official, organized, backed by facts and signatures. That night, the family gathered in the living room. Jasmine and Naomi sat on opposite ends of the couch like they were already in court. Shayla stood leaning against the wall, arms crossed. Eleanor stood in the center, holding the letter. Her voice shook as she read it aloud. As soon as she finished, Jasmine snapped, "She's lying! Anyone can fake a DNA test." Naomi reached out and took the papers. She scanned them slowly, her tone even but sharp. "This test is from a lab, not some printout from the internet. It's real, and we need to deal with it." Eleanor spoke softly, her voice nearly breaking. "He had a son, and he kept him from me for 17 years. Shayla didn't hesitate. That woman knew what she was doing, but Marcus, he knew too. This wasn't some affair. This was a second life. Jasmine was already angry. "We need to protect Dad's name. We need to talk to someone. Get ahead of this before it becomes public." Naomi cut in. "It's not about his name. It's about the truth. Mom deserves that. We all do." The room felt like it might explode. Anger, grief, confusion. It all swirled between them, but Elena said nothing more. Her heart pounded in her chest. She stepped outside onto the porch, cold air hitting her face. She leaned against the railing, trying to breathe. Her husband had a child, a full life outside their home, and she was never supposed to find out. Not like this. Later that week, Elena sat across from her attorney, Angela Reese, a calm, sharply dressed black woman in her early 40s, with a quiet confidence and sharp mind. She'd built a career protecting women who were left cleaning up the mess powerful men left behind. Angela laid the facts on the table. If the DNA test held up in court, Jaden had a right to inherit. Since Marcus hadn't updated his will in years, and if any proof existed that he had promised or provided financial support to Renee or Jaden, then a chunk of Marcus's estate could be reallocated. Worse still, if Marcus had hidden this on purpose, and Elena had benefited from funds that should have gone to his son, she could be held liable, even if she had no idea. Elena sat back, her hands clasped in her lap. Her mind raced, not just about the money, about the lies, about all the nights Marcus was working late, about the trips, the unexplained absences, the times she convinced herself she was being paranoid. Angela looked directly at her. "You have two options, contest paternity or confront it. But either way, we have to move forward." Eleanor looked down, her voice small but steady. "I want the truth, all of it, even if it ruins everything." In the quiet hours when the house slept and her mind refused to, Eleanor began pulling at the threads of Marcus's secrets. She started with his old desk in the study, the one she'd never dared touch in their 28 years of marriage. Hidden beneath folders and law books, she discovered a USB drive. On it were years of bank transfers to an entity called D. Rhodes Consulting. At first glance, it looked like nothing. But Shayla, who had contacts in finance, confirmed it. A shell company. Further digging led to something worse. Real estate documents buried in his cloud storage showed a townhouse in Decatur, bought 12 years ago under Marcus's name, then quietly transferred to Renee 5 years later. It wasn't a temporary fling. He was setting them up, making sure they were cared for, protected. Then came the folder that nearly undid her. J.D. Legacy. Inside was a carefully organized timeline of Jaden's life. His baby photos, first birthday, report cards. A video of Marcus sitting in the bleachers at one of Jaden's football games, grinning, cheering. A side of him Elena never saw. Relaxed, involved, present. She watched the video 3 times. The final time, she broke down sobbing, not just from betrayal, but from how easy it had been for him to live 2 lives. The next morning, Naomi showed up at Jasmine's house. She didn't knock. Jasmine opened the door and barely had time to step aside before Naomi walked in, holding the printed financial records and real estate transfers. "Stop protecting him," Naomi said. "You're acting like the truth is a threat." "It is," Jasmine shot back. "This is our family's reputation. What do you think this does to Mum? To Dad's legacy? He lied to her for 17 years. Lied to us. He didn't just cheat. He built a life with someone else. A child." Jasmine's face tightened. "Don't pretend he didn't love you." Naomi's eyes burned. "He was there, Jasmine. Not with me. I got presents. That's not the same as love." They stood there for a long beat. The divide between them was no longer just about Marcos. It was about truth and denial, grief and protection. They stopped speaking after that day. Elena, against Jasmine's wishes, requested to meet Renee face to face. Renee agreed. They met at a quiet cafe, seated at a corner table where no one would bother them. Renee looked calm, maybe even tired, like someone used to being on the outside. Eleanor leaned in. "Why now?" Renee answered without hesitation. "Because he's gone, and my son deserves the truth, and what was promised to him." "You were with him while he was married to me," Elena whispered. "You robbed my life." "I didn't take anything," Renee replied. "He chose to be in both places. I just didn't lie to my son about who his father was." She slid a small, leather-bound notebook across the table. "He wrote these letters to Jaden for years. Some he gave him. Most he didn't. Maybe you should read them." Elena opened the book. In Marcus's familiar handwriting, one entry read, "I wish I were brave enough to bring our worlds together, but I've built too much on silence. Jaden deserves more than crumbs. Someday I'll fix it." Elena closed the book gently. She didn't yell, didn't throw it back. She just said, "You had pieces of him. I had pieces of him, but no one had all of him." Renee nodded, her eyes soft. "I didn't come to fight. I came to make sure my son is seen." A week later, Naomi ran into Jaden at a coffee shop near her art school campus. She recognized him instantly. He froze when she approached, clearly bracing for confrontation. But she sat down beside him. "You didn't ask for this," she said. "Neither did we." Jaden stared at the cup in his hand. "He told me about you. All of you. I used to Google your names. Try to guess what you were like." Naomi blinked, the anger inside her softening for the first time. "He told you about us?" "Yeah," Jaden said. "Said you were brilliant. Said your mom could silence a room with a look. I wanted to meet you, but not like this." They ended up talking for nearly 2 hours. Naomi left confused, but changed. Jaden wasn't the villain. He was the product of a man who couldn't choose. Back home, Eleanor met again with Angela. The court had officially validated Jaden's paternity. He now had full legal rights to Marcus's estate. Marcus's failure to update his will opened the door to retroactive support, shared assets, and claims to retirement accounts. Angela broke the news carefully. You could lose access to half the Decatur property, one of the investment accounts, possibly more depending on what's proven. Elena listened, quiet. Angela looked at her closely. "You can fight the amount, but you can't fight the truth anymore." Elena nodded slowly. "I'm not fighting him. I'm fighting who I became, staying with a man who never told me the truth." Later that night, she walked into their master bedroom for the first time in days. It smelled like him. She opened his closet, reached up to the top shelf, and pulled down an old wooden box. Inside was a journal. She opened it to the last entry, dated just a week before his death. "I don't know how to fix this. I've built a wall so high between my 2 lives. I've forgotten which one is real. I love Elena. I love Renee. But love in pieces is no love at all. I'm tired." Elena sat on the floor, the journal in her lap. Her heart broke in silence, not just from the lies, not just from the betrayal, but from the slow, agonizing realization that she had built her entire life on a version of love that never truly existed. 3 weeks after the funeral, Elena hosts what's supposed to be a quiet dinner. Just her, Jasmine, Naomi, Shayla, and Angela, her lawyer. But she's invited 2 unexpected guests, Renee and Jaden. Jasmine is furious the moment she sees them walk in. Naomi stiffens, not angry, just alert. Shayla stands in the corner like she's ready to block a punch. Elena raises her hand. Tonight, I don't want whispers. I want the truth in one room. They all sit. The air is thick. Elena begins, her voice calm but firm. I loved a man for 28 years. I built a life with him, but I didn't know his whole story, and it's time we all face it. Renee doesn't speak. Jaden keeps his head low. Jasmine's jaw is clenched. Naomi is watching everyone, especially her mother. Elena pulls out the journal, Marcus's journal. She places it on the table. I found this in his closet. It's his handwriting, his words. And he didn't just live 2 lives. He hated himself for it. Angela, the lawyer, breaks the silence. You should all hear this. She reads the final entry aloud, the one where Marcus admitted he no longer knew which life was real, where he confessed loving both women, but said love in pieces wasn't real love at all. The room grows still. Jasmine finally speaks. Why are we letting this woman in our house? Eleanor looks at her. Because she was lied to, just like I was. No, Mom. She knew about you. She knew he was married. Renee quietly says, yes, I did, and I carry that shame. But Marcus promised me things. He said you wouldn't leave him. He said your world couldn't afford scandal, and I believed he'd one day make it right. Shayla snaps. You had a whole child with a married man and stayed silent. Renee, I didn't stay silent. I wrote letters. I called. He kept us separate, always with promises, always one more year. I stopped believing him, but Jaden didn't. Jaden finally speaks. I never wanted to replace anyone. I just wanted to be known. Naomi, eyes red, turns to her sister. We weren't the only ones lied to, Jazz. We're not the only ones who hurt. Jasmine, this doesn't feel like justice. It feels like betrayal. Elena says, it's both. She turns to Jaden. You lost a father. I lost a truth. I don't know if either of us will ever feel whole again. Jaden wipes his eyes. He was kind, but he was never fully there. I always felt like I was a secret. Angela places legal documents on the table. Jaden is now legally named as Marcus's child. The court will grant him part of the estate. We can fight over numbers, or we can choose a more human path. Jasmine walks out. Shayla follows her. Eleanor sits there holding Marcus's journal, and then she slides it across the table to Jaden. He wanted you to have this. All of it. The truth, the pain, the love. It's not enough, but it's something. Renee nods, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Naomi stands behind her mother and rests a hand on her shoulder. And for a moment, in a room once divided by lies, there is stillness. Fragile, but real. The confrontation is over, but the truth will echo for years. 2 months have passed. The legal proceedings are nearly complete. The estate has been divided. Jaden received his rightful share, along with access to a trust Marcus quietly created for him years ago. No lawsuits, no court battles. Elena didn't fight for the money. She fought for clarity, and she got it. The house feels different now, lighter. Not because the pain is gone, but because the silence has finally been broken. One morning, Elena wakes up before dawn. She walks through the kitchen barefoot, coffee in hand, and looks at the wall where family photos used to hang. Most are gone now, not in anger, just truth. She's creating space for new beginnings. Later that day, she visits her old college campus. She walks through the architecture building, a place she once loved but gave up for Marcus's career. The smell of sawdust and graphite awakens something in her. At 55, Elena signs up for a continuing education course in architectural design, not to build buildings, but to rebuild herself. That same week, she sits down with Naomi at a local cafe. Naomi, you're smiling again. Eleanor, not because I'm happy, but because I'm free. Naomi, from him? Eleanor, no, from pretending. She then meets with Jaden, this time alone. They sit in the park. She hands him a sealed envelope, a photo of Marcus holding baby Jaden, taken from the folder she once found hidden. Elena, this was real too. And even though I didn't get to know you as a child, I hope it's not too late now. Jaden, do you hate me? Elena, no, you're a boy your father loved. That doesn't threaten me. It completes the picture. Jaden smiles, a soft, shy smile. For the first time, he feels seen. Jasmine eventually comes around, slowly, quietly. One day, she visits Elena with a pie in her hand and tears in her eyes. I was just scared, she admits. I didn't want to lose what we had. Eleanor hugs her. We didn't lose it. We're just learning how to tell the whole story now. That night, Eleanor writes the first entry in her new journal. My marriage wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. I stayed too long in silence, but I'm no longer afraid of my voice. I don't know what comes next, but I'll choose it, fully awake. The woman who once lived in Marcus's shadow now walks in her own light. It's been months since the funeral. Life hasn't gone back to normal. It's just become something new. Eleanor doesn't cry as much anymore. She sleeps through most nights. Some mornings are still heavy, but she gets up anyway. She's not the same woman who stood by Marcus's casket. That version of her was full of questions, pain, and disbelief. This version is lighter, not because she's healed everything, but because she's accepted what is. She thinks about the years she gave to a man who kept half his life hidden. She doesn't regret loving him, but she regrets staying quiet for so long. Now, she spends her time doing things for herself. A morning walk, a sketch pad, coffee with Naomi, occasional messages from Jaden. Jasmine calls more often, softer than before. Elena doesn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore, not even to herself. She's not angry, she's not bitter, she's just honest. And for the first time in her life, that feels like peace. Hey besties, thanks so much for watching till the end. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Bye.